You understand why you can't come, don't you? My mother said, her tone casual as if she were talking about the weather. Vivian's wedding isn't about you, Juliet. It's about her special day. And honestly, your presence would just make things complicated. I sat on the floral-patterned couch in my parents' living room in Charleston, South Carolina, staring at her neatly manicured hands resting on her lap. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows on her face, but her words were anything but gentle. My name is Juliet, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a freelance photographer, focusing on architecture and travel. My earnings are modest, just enough to pay rent for my small studio apartment and maintain my camera gear. For years, I had accepted that being the overlooked daughter was simply part of my family dynamic. My younger sister, Vivian, 3 years younger, had always been the favorite. She was prettier, more outgoing, and far more successful in my parents' eyes. She secured a high-paying marketing job right after college, married a wealthy investment banker named Gregory, and now lived in a pristine townhouse that my mother never stopped boasting about. But this was different. This wasn't about being forgotten during holidays or having my birthday overshadowed by Vivian's latest milestone. This was deliberate, being excluded from what my mother proudly called the event of the decade. Complicated how? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though my hands trembled. My mother sighed, as if explaining this to me required great patience. Vivian has invited 300 guests. Everyone important will be there. The venue alone costs $75,000. She's wearing a custom Vera Wang gown. 2 bridal magazines will be covering it. This isn't some small family gathering, Juliet. It's a statement, and apparently I would ruin that statement. You know how you are, she added, a phrase that hit harder than anything else. You never quite fit in. Always in jeans, always carrying that old camera bag. Vivian's friends are elegant, polished people. You'd feel out of place anyway. I wanted to protest, to say that I owned formal clothes, that I could look presentable, that being a photographer didn't make me some sort of outsider. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about clothes. It was about control. It was about keeping me in my place. Does Vivian know you're saying this? I asked. For a brief moment, my mother's expression shifted. We discussed it as a family. Your father agrees it's for the best. And honestly, Juliet, you should be thankful. $750,000 for a wedding? That kind of extravagance would only make you uncomfortable. $750,000. The number was staggering, more than I had earned in the past 5 years combined. And they were spending it all on one day, one event I was not permitted to attend because my presence might somehow spoil their image. I stood up slowly, picking up my camera bag from beside the couch. My mother watched with the same composed expression, as though she had just shared something perfectly reasonable. I understand, I said quietly. She looked almost relieved. I knew you would. You've always been sensible about these things. Sensible. That was her polite term for obedient, for quietly accepting whatever small bits of affection the family decided to offer. I walked toward the door, my boots soft against the polished wood floor. Just before stepping out, I turned back. When is it? The wedding? June 15th. But Juliet, I really think I just wanted to know. I cut in, making a quick note in my calendar. I left before she could add another word. As I drove away from their perfect colonial house, something settled inside me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a calm, sharp understanding of my place in this family and my value to them. June 15th was 3 months away. 3 months they would spend perfecting Vivian's big day while I was expected to quietly fade from the picture. To stay conveniently out of sight so no one had to explain why the older sister wasn't invited. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and sat there for a while staring at my phone. Then I opened my banking app. $4,300, not much, but entirely mine, earned through my own effort and skill. An idea began to take shape, bold and impulsive. Unlike the sensible version of Juliet my mother preferred, if they didn't want me at Vivian's flawless wedding, fine. But that didn't mean I had to sit alone in my apartment that day, scrolling through photos of a celebration I'd been excluded from. I opened my laptop and started searching. The idea grew stronger over the next few weeks, filling my thoughts between photography assignments. I had always dreamed of visiting Paris, a dream I'd quietly tucked away as unreachable for someone living from one paycheck to the next. But as I reviewed my savings and calculated the costs, I realized it could actually happen. Barely, but possible. Vivian and I had once been close, during a short stretch of childhood. maybe 4 or 5 years of ordinary happiness before the favoritism became impossible to ignore. I remembered us building blanket forts, whispering secrets long after bedtime. But around middle school, something changed. Vivian realized she held power in the family dynamic, that our parents would believe her side of any story, that she could get her way by playing the victim. The first real break happened when I was 15 and she was 12. I had saved up babysitting money to buy a professional camera, something I deeply wanted. When it arrived, Vivian threw a tantrum about how I received something expensive while she got nothing. Within a week, my parents bought her a laptop that cost twice as much. That set the pattern. In college, while I worked part-time jobs to cover what my small scholarship didn't, Vivian got a new car for her 18th birthday. My parents said helping with my tuition was enough, never mind that their help barely covered textbooks. After graduation, I struggled to grow my photography business while Vivian landed a marketing job that paid more than I could dream of. My parents' pride in her was unmistakable. Their charming youngest daughter was finally making it. Meanwhile, I was invisible, unless they needed free photography or someone to house sit. I should have been furious, and somewhere deep down, I was. But mostly I felt exhausted. Exhausted from waiting for them to value me equally, from shrinking myself so Vivian could shine brighter. 2 weeks after my mother's announcement, I received the official wedding invitation in the mail. It was addressed to my parents, listing every invited family member, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me. The exclusion was intentional and clearly stated. I stared at the heavy cardstock with its gold lettering and perfect calligraphy. In that moment, something solidified inside me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message about my worth. That evening, I called my best friend, Kara. We'd met 5 years earlier at a photography workshop and stayed close, even living in different cities. She understood my family dynamics without judgment. They didn't invite you? Kara's voice rose in disbelief. To your own sister's wedding? Apparently, I'm a distraction from her perfect day. That's insane. What are you going to do? I took a steady breath. I'm thinking of going to Paris that weekend. There was silence then. Tell me more. I've been researching. There's a photographer in Paris who does luxury bridal-style shoots for travelers. Custom gown, hair, makeup, sunrise session at the Eiffel Tower. It's pricey, but I can manage if I plan carefully. You want to do your own wedding-style shoot without a wedding? Why not? If they're going to exclude me, I'll create my own moment. I know the value of a strong image. Kara laughed. I love this. I absolutely love this. When do we leave? We? You think I'm letting you do this alone? I've got vacation days saved up. Let me check flights. That conversation changed everything. Suddenly, it wasn't just a daydream or a way to escape the sting of being left out. It became a concrete plan, one that felt real because a friend genuinely believed in me. Over the next month, I took on every photography job I could find. Corporate headshots, real estate shoots, family portraits, anything that would help me save. Slowly, my bank account grew. I spent evenings researching Paris neighborhoods, comparing hotels, and finally discovered a photographer named Isabel, who specialized in the exact kind of shoot I imagined. When I reached out and explained my idea, Isabel responded with excitement. She mentioned a designer friend who could craft a custom gown to my measurements. She knew the ideal backdrops, understood my concept perfectly, and was eager to collaborate. The dress alone cost $8,500. The photography package added another $2,000. Flights and hotel for Kara and me came to around $3,000 combined, plus $300 for hair and makeup. Altogether, it was more than I had ever spent on myself. But each time I hesitated, I remembered that wedding invitation, the one missing my name. I thought about my mother's offhand remark, her quiet confidence that I would simply accept being excluded. 3 weeks before Vivian's wedding, I booked everything: flights, hotel, the shoot, and sent my measurements to the designer. It was finally happening. I didn't tell my family. They never asked what I'd be doing that weekend anyway. They probably assumed I'd spend it quietly at home, maybe catching a movie or editing photos, certainly not making any statement. Kara knew everything, though. She was almost more thrilled than I was, researching Paris cafes and planning what we'd explore beyond the shoot. The trip grew into something much deeper, not a reaction, but a way to reclaim my own story. One evening in late May, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Vivian. the first one since the wedding plans began. Mom said you understood about the wedding. I appreciate you being mature about it. It's nothing personal, nothing personal. As if excluding your only sibling from your wedding was a logistical choice, like choosing between salmon or chicken for dinner. I stared at that message for a long time before replying, I hope you have a beautiful day. And I meant it, in part. I truly hoped she'd have everything she wanted from her lavish celebration, because I was about to have something of my own, too. A week before the trip, the nerves hit. I started doubting myself. Was this childish? Just an expensive form of revenge that would leave me broke and unsatisfied? What if no one even cared about the Paris photos? But then my mother called, and those doubts disappeared. Vivian is so stressed, she began without even saying hello. Her dress alterations aren't right, and the florist had to replace 2 kinds of roses. Can you imagine? After all her planning, these little disasters? That sounds frustrating, I said. She's handling it beautifully, though, my mother continued. Such a professional. Gregory's mother is hosting a luncheon tomorrow for the wedding party and close family. It should be lovely. Immediate family, a group I apparently no longer belong to. I'm sure it'll be lovely, I said. Are you working that weekend? The wedding weekend? My mother asked. There was something in her tone that made me think she actually wanted me to be busy. That having a valid reason for not attending might make everything seem less painful. I have plans, I replied. Oh, good. I'm glad you'll have something to keep you occupied. After our call, I pulled out my suitcase and began packing. Kara was flying in 2 days before our trip to Paris, staying with me so we could travel together. The designer had sent final photos of the gown, and it was stunning. An ivory dress with soft beading on the bodice and a flowing skirt made for photographs. It was exactly what I'd imagined, and more. When Kara arrived, we spent the evening going over every part of the trip. She even brought props, a vintage veil she'd found at a boutique and a kit to preserve the bouquet afterward. This is going to be amazing, she said, scrolling through Isabel's portfolio. Look at these shots. You're going to look like you walked straight out of a magazine. I studied the photos, elegant women in breathtaking gowns at Paris landmarks. In just 2 days, that would be me. The thought was thrilling, yet slightly frightening. Do you think I'm being spiteful? I asked. Kara set down the tablet, her expression serious. I think you're just being human, she said. They left you out of something huge and expected you to quietly disappear. You're not crashing the wedding or causing trouble. You're simply living your life and finding joy. That's not being vindictive. That's self-preservation. We flew out Thursday evening, arriving in Paris early Friday morning. Despite being drained from the overnight flight, excitement buzzed through me. The city was everything I'd dreamed of. Elegant. Historic, alive with possibility. Our hotel, a small boutique in the 7th arrondissement, was within walking distance of the Eiffel Tower. After checking in and napping for a bit, we met Isabel at her studio. She was warm, energetic, and spoke fluent English with a charming accent. The dress came yesterday, she said, leading us to a back room where it hung on a mannequin. I think you'll be very pleased. It was even more breathtaking in person, the ivory fabric catching the light perfectly, the beading subtle yet intricate. I had told the designer I wanted something bridal but not like a costume, something elegant enough for any formal event. She had captured that perfectly. We'll begin at 5:30 tomorrow morning, Isabel explained. Sunrise light is perfect and there are fewer tourists. Hair and makeup start at 4. It's early, but I promise, it's worth it. That evening, Kara and I wandered around Paris, had dinner at a small cafe, and strolled along the Seine as the sun set. I tried not to think about home. Guests were arriving in Charleston. Vivian was likely relaxing at a spa or attending a pre-wedding event, and my parents were proudly hosting. Meanwhile, I was here, in Paris, about to create something entirely my own. We went to bed early, alarms set. At 3:30 a.m., we got up and began preparing. The stylist arrived at the hotel, transforming my usual casual look into something otherworldly. She wove tiny flowers into my updo and gave me a natural yet polished look. By 5 a.m., dressed in the ivory gown, I felt like someone else entirely. Kara kept snapping photos, grinning nonstop. You look like a princess, she said. Vivian's going to lose it when she sees these. If she sees them, I replied. I haven't decided what I'll do with the photos yet. That was partly true. I had ideas, but none felt final. Part of me wanted to share them publicly. Proof that I could exist and create beauty without anyone's approval. Another part wanted to keep them private, a quiet act of rebellion that only I would truly understand. Isabel picked us up and drove us to the Trocadero Gardens. The sky was beginning to glow soft pink on the horizon. The Eiffel Tower stood before us, bold, timeless, and impossibly beautiful. Perfect, Isabel said softly, already evaluating the light and angles. For the next 2 hours, we moved through the gardens and nearby spots. Isabel guided me with her professional precision, having me turn, lift the dress, glance toward the tower, and walk along the pathways. Kara managed the veil and train, ensuring every movement looked flawless. It felt magical, there's no better word for it. As the sun rose and golden light touched the scene, I stopped thinking about being excluded from Vivian's wedding or being the forgotten daughter. For that moment, I was simply Juliet, in one of the world's most beautiful cities, looking exactly as I wanted to. When Isabel finally lowered her camera, she smiled. We've created something truly special. I can feel it. We moved to a few more locations, capturing shots near the Seine and on a picturesque bridge. By 8 a.m., the shoot was done. I was tired but exhilarated. Back at the hotel, I carefully removed the dress and hung it where I could admire it. Kara and I collapsed on our beds. That was unreal, Kara said. Juliet, you just made art, I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in ages. Not happiness exactly, but validation. Proof that I could create something beautiful on my own without needing my family's approval or presence. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother, wedding day. Everything looks perfect, I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my eyes and drifted into sleep, satisfied in a way words couldn't describe. Tomorrow, I'd see the photos. Tomorrow, I'd decide what to do with them. Tomorrow, everything could change. But for now, I rested, knowing I had done something brave, beautiful, and entirely for myself. We spent the rest of Saturday exploring Paris, though my thoughts kept returning to Charleston. By then, Vivian's ceremony had likely begun. I pictured the venue, probably a grand mansion or elegant ballroom decorated to perfection. 300 guests in formal wear. My parents greeting everyone with polished smiles, proudly entertaining Gregory's wealthy family. And no one mentioning me. If anyone asked about the older daughter, I was sure my parents had a ready answer. Oh, Juliet couldn't make it, work commitments. Something vague and polite to end the topic quickly. Kara noticed my distraction as we sat at a cafe in the Latin Quarter that evening. You're thinking about it, she said. Hard not to, I admitted. I keep wondering if anyone even noticed I wasn't there. Their loss, Kara said firmly. And honestly, after what we did this morning, after seeing those photos tomorrow, you already won. I wanted to believe her, but a hollow ache lingered. It wasn't jealousy over Vivian's wedding, it was grief. Grief for the family bond I'd always wanted but never had. Grief for being the daughter left out. Sunday morning, we met Isabel at her studio to review the photos. She had a large monitor ready, and when the first image appeared, I gasped. It was me, but more radiant, more confident. The morning light gave everything a dreamlike glow. The Eiffel Tower framed perfectly behind me, the dress flowing like frozen water, my expression calm and self-assured. Keep going, Kara whispered. Leaning forward, Isabel clicked through one image after another. Each was breathtaking. Some dramatic, silhouettes against the brightening sky. Others soft and romantic, the veil catching the breeze. There were close-ups highlighting dress details and wide shots showing the full scenery. These are professional level, I said, my voice catching. They could be in magazines. They should be, Isabel replied with a smile. You have a natural connection with the camera, Juliet. Most people stiffen up, but you captured the vision perfectly. We selected the best photos for editing. Isabel promised to have them ready by Tuesday, our last full day in Paris before flying home Wednesday. As we left the studio, Kara squeezed my arm. You have to post these, she said. I know you're unsure, but they're too good to hide. I don't know. I hesitated. What if it looks like I'm trying to outshine Vivian? So what if it does? Kara replied. She excluded you from her wedding. She doesn't get to dictate your life or what you share. These aren't about her. They're about you. We spent Sunday and Monday sightseeing, museums, cafes, incredible meals, but my mind kept going back to those photos. Kara was right. They were too beautiful to keep private. And more than that, I'd earned them. I had saved, planned, and taken a risk. Why should I downplay my achievement just because it might overshadow my sister? By Monday evening, I'd made up my mind. When Isabel sent the final edits Tuesday morning, I would post one. Not to hurt Vivian, but to celebrate something I was proud of. If my family had an issue with that, they should have thought of it before excluding me. Tuesday afternoon, the edited photos arrived. They were even more stunning. Rich colors, perfect lighting, every detail refined. I spent an hour choosing which to post, finally settling on one taken as the sun broke the horizon. I stood in profile, facing the Eiffel Tower, the dress glowing in golden light. The composition was flawless, romantic yet strong. Now for the caption. I typed and deleted several versions, searching for the right tone. Not bitter, not spiteful, just confident. Finally, I wrote, "No invite needed to shine brighter." I stared at the words for a long moment. Subtle enough that only my family would catch the meaning, yet general enough for everyone else. It was honest. My truth, expressed with grace instead of anger. At 7 p.m. Paris time, 1 p.m. in Charleston, I posted it on Instagram. Vivian's wedding had been Saturday. She was likely on her honeymoon, basking in her own post-wedding glow, probably sharing her photos too. I closed the app right after posting, too nervous to watch the reactions unfold. Kara and I went out for dinner, hoping to distract ourselves with food, wine, and casual conversation. But when we returned to the hotel 2 hours later, my phone was flooded with notifications. The post had already gained over 2,000 likes, far more than anything I'd shared before, and the comments were nonstop. "This is absolutely gorgeous. Where's this dress from?" "I need it." "Paris goals. You look like a fairy tale princess." As I scrolled through dozens of similar remarks, my heart raced. Then I noticed messages from people I actually knew, distant cousins, old classmates, even some professional acquaintances, all expressing admiration for the photo. But there was nothing from my immediate family. Not from my parents. Not from Vivian. Complete silence from the people who should have cared most. "It's going viral," Kara said, glancing at her phone. "Look, someone shared it on a wedding inspiration page. They're calling it a solo bridal Paris shoot and wondering if it's a new trend." I checked the share count at already over 300. And rising fast among the wedding photography pages I followed online. People were talking about it. Someone had even tagged several bridal magazines, suggesting they feature the shoot. "This is unbelievable," I whispered. "It's actually going viral," Kara smiled. "You created something that resonates with people. This is what happens when real emotion meets professional quality. People can sense authenticity." We stayed up late, watching the numbers rise. By midnight in Paris, the post had 5,000 likes and over 1,000 shares. A major wedding blog reached out, asking to feature it. 2 photographers wanted Isabel's contact to credit her for the shoot, and a designer asked about the gown. Still nothing from my family. I went to bed that night, my phone constantly buzzing with new alerts. It should have felt like a victory, but instead I felt strangely hollow. I had wanted validation, proof that I mattered, and I was getting it from thousands of strangers. Yet the people whose approval I longed for remained silent. By Wednesday morning, we were packing for our flight home. The post was still gaining attention. Overnight, a major lifestyle site with millions of followers had published an article about the rising solo wedding shoot trend, prominently featuring my photo. The numbers were now staggering. Over 15,000 likes, nearly 5,000 shares, and comments in several languages. People were tagging friends, sharing their own stories of being excluded from family events, and asking how to book similar sessions. I had unintentionally tapped into something larger than my personal story. Something that spoke to those who had ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or left out. My photo had become more than a pretty picture. It symbolized reclaiming your own story when others try to erase you from it. On the flight home, exhaustion finally hit. I slept most of the way, leaving my phone on airplane mode to escape the constant pings. Kara kept checking hers during layovers, updating me. "A bridal magazine wants to interview you," she said during our New York stopover. And someone from a morning show reached out. "They're planning a segment on solo celebration shoots." "That's wild," I replied. "I'm not qualified to talk about trends. I just wanted some nice photos." "You started something," Kara said firmly. "Whether you meant to or not." We landed in Charleston late Wednesday evening. I noticed several missed calls from my mother and a series of texts from Vivian, but I didn't read them on the ride home, too tired to face whatever was coming. Thursday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing again. My mother. I thought about ignoring it, but after the fourth call, I answered. Juliet, what on earth were you thinking? Her tone was sharp with anger. Good morning to you too, I said, sitting up. Don't be sarcastic. You posted that ridiculous photo during Vivian's wedding. Do you realize how inappropriate that was? I posted it Monday, I corrected. 2 days after the wedding? That doesn't matter. It's everywhere now. People keep sending it to Vivian, asking if you're her sister and why you weren't at the wedding. You've completely overshadowed her big day. A wave of anger rose in me. Her big day that I wasn't even invited to? We explained this, my mother replied tightly. It was Vivian's moment, and you couldn't even let her have that. You had to make it about yourself. I went to Paris, I said, keeping my voice calm. I took photos I'm proud of and shared one on my personal Instagram. How is that about Vivian? It's the timing, she said. It was the only weekend I could afford the trip, I interrupted. Or did you expect me to plan my life around an event I wasn't allowed to attend? There was silence. Then she said coldly, Vivian is very upset. She excluded me from her wedding without a word, I said. If she's upset that I exist online, that's her issue, not mine. This is exactly why we didn't invite you, my mother snapped. That attitude is always craving attention. You've always been jealous of your sister. I've never been jealous, I replied, and I meant it. I've been hurt, ignored, treated as if I mattered less. But I'm not jealous. And I'm done apologizing for being myself. I hung up before she could respond. My hands trembled. In all my years of quietly accepting their treatment, I had never spoken to my mother like that before. It felt both empowering and terrifying at the same time. Within an hour, Vivian called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. You sabotaged my wedding, she said right away, her voice trembling with anger or tears, or both. I wasn't even in the same country as your wedding, I replied. You know what I mean. Everyone's talking about your ridiculous Paris photos instead of my wedding. I spent 3 months planning every single detail, and you ruined it with one attention-seeking post. Vivian, I didn't do anything to you. I took photos in Paris, that's all. During my wedding weekend, she shot back, you planned it to steal the spotlight. Actually, I planned it because it was the only weekend I didn't have to attend family events, I said evenly. Since I wasn't invited to yours? Mom explained why. No, I interrupted. Mom made excuses. There's a difference. You wanted me left out and you got your way. But you don't get to dictate what I do with my life, or my social media. I barely got any engagement on my wedding photos, Vivian said, her voice now breaking completely. 200 likes. Even my photographer's post got less than that. But your fake wedding shoot has gone viral? Do you know how that feels? Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but a colder part of me felt only satisfaction. I imagine it feels like being told you're not good enough to attend your sister's wedding, I said quietly. Like being erased from family photos and gatherings. Like always being the disappointment who never measures up. So yes, Vivian, I know exactly how that feels. She hung up. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, feeling both vindicated and strangely empty. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For them to finally see me, to face the consequences of how they'd treated me. Yet it didn't feel as good as I had expected. My phone buzzed with a text from Kara. Are you okay? Saw your Instagram comments? Your family found out. I replied, yeah, they're angry, but I'm fine. Kara wrote back, good. You did nothing wrong. Remember that. I spent the rest of Thursday catching up on emails and trying to ignore the ongoing explosion around my post. It had passed 20,000 likes. Several blogs had shared it. 2 more magazines had reached out. A wedding planning company even offered to sponsor similar shoots and asked if I'd consider being a brand ambassador. It felt surreal. I had gone to Paris to create one. Beautiful moment for myself, and somehow started a social media movement. People were now posting their own solo celebration. Photos with hashtags like Audrey Shine Without Permission and my own narrative. On Friday afternoon, an unknown number called. I almost ignored it but answered at the last moment. Is this Juliet? This is Melissa from Bridal Dreams magazine. We'd love to feature your Paris shoot in our next issue and do a full interview about the experience. Bridal Dreams. one of the top bridal publications in the country, the same one rumored to have covered Vivian's wedding. I'm interested, I heard myself say. What would that involve? As Melissa described the opportunity, I realized it was bigger than I'd imagined. A 4-page spread, professional coverage, and my story told in my own words. They called it a new kind of celebration when you're your own guest of honor. After we hung up, I sat in silence before laughing softly, not cruelly, but from disbelief and irony. Vivian had spent $750,000 to get magazine coverage, and I had unintentionally done it with one Instagram post and a $5,000 trip to Paris. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, my post kept growing, 40,000 likes, then 60,000. Brands began contacting me with offers for sponsorships and collaborations. A travel company wanted to create a solo celebration package inspired by my story. A fashion designer proposed a line of non-bridal formal wear for women celebrating themselves. It was overwhelming. I was a freelance photographer barely managing rent, and suddenly I had opportunities that could change my life completely. But more than fame or money, I felt seen. Thousands of people understood what I'd done and why it mattered. My family, however, was unraveling. On Saturday morning, my father called. Unlike my mother, he didn't yell, he just sounded tired. Juliet, can we talk in person? We met at a coffee shop near my apartment that afternoon. He was already there, looking older than I remembered. The stress of the week was clear on his face. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. What did you want to talk about? He sighed, stirring his coffee for no reason. Your mother and sister are very upset. I know. They've made that clear. They feel you deliberately tried to ruin Vivian's wedding. And what do you think? I asked. He paused for a long time. I think we didn't handle the wedding situation well. Your mother wanted to avoid tension and keep the focus on Vivian's day. But maybe we went too far. Maybe, I said, the words sharper than intended. We should have included you, he said quietly. That's what I came to say. We should have found a way to make everyone feel welcome. But you didn't. No, he admitted. He finally met my eyes. And I'm sorry for that. I should have stood up for you, and I didn't. It was the first apology I'd ever received from my family, and yet it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. I appreciate that, I said. But Dad, this isn't just about the wedding. It's about years of feeling like I've always mattered less than Vivian. The wedding was only the clearest example. I know, he said quietly, looking genuinely regretful. Your mother and I saw Vivian's confidence and success, and we wanted to encourage it. We didn't realize how much we were overlooking you. You realized, I corrected. You just didn't think it was important enough to change. He didn't respond. Instead, he took out his phone and showed me Vivian's Instagram. Her wedding photos had comments turned off, and where there should have been hundreds of likes, there were only a few. She's devastated, he said. All that planning, all that expense, and no one seems to care. Meanwhile, your Paris photos are everywhere. She feels like you stole her moment. I didn't steal anything, I said firmly. I created my own moment. The fact that people connected with it more than her wedding isn't my fault. I know, he said softly. Logically, I do. But she's my daughter too, and she's hurting. So am I replied. I've been hurting for years, and none of you noticed. Now it matters only because Vivian is upset. That's not fair, is it? I stood up. Dad, I appreciate your apology about the wedding, but one apology doesn't undo years of being dismissed. And I'm not going to apologize for living my life or sharing it just because it makes Vivian uncomfortable. Before he could reply, I left. Walking back to my apartment, the weight of everything settled on me. This wasn't the neat revenge story I might have imagined. It was complex, painful, and tangled for everyone involved. But I also felt something else. Freedom. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I wasn't sorry for taking up space. On Monday morning, I did the interview with Bridal Dreams magazine. The journalist, Melissa, was warm and perceptive, asking thoughtful questions beyond the surface. What made you decide to do this shoot? She asked. I wanted to create something beautiful for myself, I said. I spent so much of my life waiting for permission to be celebrated, to be seen as worthy. This was me granting that permission to myself. And the timing during your sister's wedding weekend? That was simply the time I had available, I said honestly. But symbolically, it felt right. She was having her perfect day with everyone's approval. I was creating mine, without needing anyone's. The article came out 3 weeks later. The layout was stunning, featuring Isabel's photos, and the piece was written with real thoughtfulness. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My Instagram following skyrocketed from 2,000 to over 100,000 in a week. But the real impact came through my inbox. Messages from women sharing stories of being overlooked or undervalued by their families. Many said they'd gone on to create their own moments of celebration, inspired by my story. I read every message, often with tears, realizing my small act of self-expression had grown into something much bigger. A week after the magazine's release, Vivian appeared at my apartment without notice. I almost didn't open the door, but curiosity won. She looked different, smaller somehow, less certain. The confidence that once defined her seemed to have faded. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside. We sat in silence in my small living room until she finally spoke. "I read the article," she said. "The parts about feeling excluded and unseen. What about them?" I asked. "I never thought about it that way," she admitted. "From my side, I was just working hard and living my life. I didn't realize—" She paused. "Didn't realize what?" "That I felt invisible? That you all made me feel that way?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "I am not apologizing for my wedding or for my choices," she continued, her defensiveness flickering. "But I am sorry that you felt so left out that you had to go to Paris alone to feel celebrated. It wasn't a perfect apology. It carried pride and hesitation, but it was still something." "Thank you," I said simply. "Are we ever going to be okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said after a pause. "Maybe, but it would mean you actually seeing me as an equal, not as someone living in your shadow." She nodded slowly. "The truth is, your Paris photos showed you were never in my shadow. You just made it seem that way by staying quiet." She left soon after. I sat for a long time thinking about her words. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had made myself smaller for years because it was easier than confronting the imbalance. But I wasn't that person anymore. Opportunities kept arriving. By the end of the month, I had signed a contract with a luxury travel brand for their solo celebration campaign. The payment exceeded what I'd earned in 6 months. A boutique hotel chain proposed an ongoing collaboration, and 3 photography workshops invited me to teach about creating authentic, viral content. My life, my confidence, my independence had transformed almost overnight. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't anxious about paying rent. I no longer had to decide between buying groceries or investing in camera gear. The irony was clear. Being excluded by my family had unintentionally propelled my career in a way that years of persistence never had. But the most surprising twist came from an unexpected source. The photographer hired for Vivian's wedding contacted me directly. Her name was Catherine, and her message was professional yet direct. "I wanted to introduce myself," she wrote. "I was contracted to photograph your sister's wedding and submit the images to Bridal Dreams magazine for publication. However, after your parachute shoot went viral, the magazine decided to cancel Vivian's feature. They said the focus had shifted toward independent celebrations, and a traditional 7-figure wedding no longer suited their editorial theme. I thought you should know since it seems your family blames you for the lost coverage. The truth is, the magazine made a strategic choice based on audience engagement. Your story simply resonated more with readers." I read that message 3 times, trying to absorb what it meant. Vivian hadn't just lost attention online, she had lost the magazine feature she was counting on, the same one my parents had likely used to justify the enormous cost of her wedding. I expected to feel victorious, but instead I felt something more complicated. Not guilt exactly, but awareness that my actions had unintended consequences. I hadn't meant to take that opportunity from her. I had only shared a photo I was proud of. Yet, intentions couldn't undo results. That evening, my mother called again. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, but pleading. "Juliet, Vivian isn't doing well. This whole situation has really affected her." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't want my sister to suffer. The wedding was supposed to be her special moment. She had planned everything perfectly, spent so much money, and now no one remembered it, all because of my Paris photos. "Mom, I didn't expect my photos to go viral. I just posted something meaningful to me." "But you must have known," she insisted. "You're a photographer. You understand how social media works." You had to realize posting those photos during her wedding would draw attention away. I posted them 2 days after the wedding, I reminded her. And even if I'd posted them the same day, I have every right to share my own work. Vivian doesn't own an entire weekend. But as her sister, I cut in, I should have been invited to the wedding in the first place. You can't have it both ways. Either I'm family enough to be expected to protect her, or I'm not family enough to be included. You don't get to choose when it's convenient. There was silence. Then quietly she asked, "When did you become so harsh?" "I'm not harsh," I said. "I'm just done being invisible." After hanging up, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my small balcony, watching the Charleston night settle in. My phone buzzed constantly, Instagram notifications, brand inquiries, new followers. My career had transformed in a matter of weeks, but my family relationships had changed permanently. There was no going back to being the version of Juliet who accepted whatever little attention came her way. That version no longer existed. The next morning, I received an email from a literary agent. She had seen the Bridal Dreams article and thought my story could make a powerful book, not just about Paris, but about finding your voice when you've been overlooked by your own family. "There's a real appetite for these stories," she wrote. "Women reclaiming their narratives, refusing to stay small. I think you could express that beautifully. A book." I had never thought of writing one. But the more I reflected, the more I realized how much I had to say. Years of being dismissed, watching Vivian celebrated while I was ignored, and slowly learning to validate myself. The decision to go to Paris, everything that followed, it all formed a story worth telling. I agreed to speak with the agent, and by the end of the week we were discussing a book proposal. The advance she mentioned was more than I had earned in 2 full years of photography. Everything was moving quickly, maybe too quickly. I was going with the flow, making choices that felt right, even when they scared me. 2 months after my trip to Paris, I received an invitation to speak at a women's empowerment conference in Atlanta. The theme was, "Creating your own narrative when others try to write you out." I was terrified. Public speaking had never been my thing, and the idea of addressing hundreds of people was overwhelming. But Kara convinced me to do it. "This is what you've worked for all your life," she said. "Not for fame or money, but for the recognition that your voice matters. Don't miss this chance." The event took place in a large hotel ballroom. I waited backstage, my hands trembling as the speaker before me finished. Then it was my turn. I stepped onto the stage, faced the audience, and began telling my story. I spoke about being the overlooked daughter, about being left out of my sister's wedding, and my decision to go to Paris. I shared photos, discussed the viral response, and reflected on what came afterward. When I finished, the applause was overwhelming. Many women approached me later, sharing their own experiences, stories of exclusion, invisibility, and finding courage to value themselves. Some were in tears, others hugged me. One woman said, "You made me feel less alone." I thought I was the only one whose family treated them that way. That night, back in my hotel room, I thought about how far I had come. Just 3 months earlier, I was the rejected sister, hurt and unseen. Now my story had touched thousands. Yet the distance from my family still hurt. Success didn't erase that pain. It only made it more complex. By September, 4 months after Paris, my book deal was finalized. My agent secured a generous advance, and the publisher wanted the manuscript within a year. I felt both excited and afraid. Writing about my life meant confronting emotions I'd spent years avoiding. My parents' reaction was predictable. My mother called, her tone tense. "You're writing a book about the family, Juliet. That's incredibly invasive. We have a right to privacy." "I'm writing about my life," I replied. "My story, my perspective. You don't get to control that, but you'll make us look bad. You'll mention the wedding. I'll tell the truth. If that makes you look bad, maybe you should have treated me better." She hung up. Vivian's message came later. "I can't believe you're doing this, profiting off family drama." "This is a new low," I didn't reply. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't spark another fight. Despite the pain, the distance from my family felt freeing. I was creating a life that didn't rely on their approval, building success on my own terms. By October, 6 months after my Paris trip, I was invited to a national morning show to discuss the solo celebration movement that had grown from my viral post. The segment, "Why Women Are Celebrating Themselves," made me nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd portray my story. The interview went better than I expected. The host was kind and genuinely curious about the emotional side of family exclusion and self-worth. When she asked about my sister's wedding, I chose my words carefully. The exclusion hurt deeply, I said. But it also gave me clarity. I realized I'd spent years waiting for my family to see my value. And I finally understood that I don't need their permission to celebrate myself. "And your relationship with your family now?" she asked. Complicated, I admitted. "We're in a tough place, but I'm at peace with that. I'm no longer sacrificing my well-being to maintain a relationship that was never healthy." After the interview aired, my Instagram following jumped past 300,000. More brand deals and speaking offers poured in. It was overwhelming but exciting. The real turning point came in late October. Bridal Dreams magazine reached out again, 6 months after their original feature. They wanted a follow-up piece titled, "The Aftermath: How One Photo Changed Everything." It would cover my career updates, the book deal, and reflections on my family. The twist? They also wanted to interview Vivian. They wanted both sides of the story. My first instinct was to decline. Giving her a platform felt risky. But my agent urged me to reconsider. "This could be powerful," she said. "If you're confident in your truth, let her speak. The contrast will speak for itself." I agreed, with conditions. I wanted to read Vivian's interview before publication and respond to any false claims. The magazine accepted. 2 weeks later, I received her transcript. Reading it was painful. She painted herself as the victim of my jealousy, someone whose perfect day had been ruined by a bitter older sister. She claimed I had always envied her, that my Paris trip was a calculated attempt to steal her spotlight. What struck me most was her lack of accountability. In her story, she bore no responsibility for excluding me. It was all our parents doing. The absence of empathy in her words was unmistakable. I wrote my response carefully without attacking her. I focused on facts, the timeline, the years of being overlooked, the invitation that excluded only me. I explained that I had chosen self-celebration because I wasn't included in family events anyway. "I can't control how my sister interprets my actions," I wrote. "But I can tell my truth. And my truth is that I spent 27 years feeling invisible in my own family. Going to Paris wasn't revenge, it was survival. It was choosing to celebrate myself when no one else would." When the article came out in mid-November, it caused a sensation. The magazine presented both sides fairly, but readers clearly took notice. Thousands of comments called out Vivian's lack of self-awareness and unwillingness to acknowledge her part in what happened. One comment summed it up. The older sister was excluded from a major family event and still found a way to celebrate life. The younger sister had a $750K wedding and is upset someone else got attention. Who's really the problem here? The story went viral again, shared across platforms, discussed on podcasts, and cited in think pieces about family dynamics and sibling rivalry. Throughout everything, Vivian stayed silent on social media. Her Instagram, once filled with polished snapshots of her flawless life, went completely quiet. My parents didn't reach out either. The silence should have felt like a win, but instead, it felt like the final break in already fragile connections. By December, 8 months after Paris, I signed the lease for a new apartment. Not just any place, but a charming 2-bedroom in a historic Charleston neighborhood. It had tall ceilings and large windows, ideal for a small home photography studio. Thanks to brand partnerships and my book advance, I could easily afford it. Kara helped me move in, and we celebrated with champagne on my new balcony overlooking the street. "You did it," she said, raising her glass. "You actually built a new life." "We did it," I corrected. "You were there through it all." "So what's next?" she asked. "More travel content, the book. All of that," I said. "But I also want to help others share their stories, especially women who feel unseen or uncertain about celebrating themselves. I'm thinking of starting workshops and creating a space for those voices." Kara smiled. "That's perfect. You've found your purpose. Maybe I had. Not just through success or recognition, but by using my experience to help others feel less alone." The book came out the following June, almost exactly a year after my Paris trip. Its title was Uninvited: Celebrating Yourself When Others Count You Out. The cover featured one of Isabel's photos, me in the ivory dress, the Eiffel Tower behind me. The launch party took place at a Charleston art gallery. Over 200 people attended, friends, colleagues, followers who had become close, and women whose lives had connected with mine through the solo celebration movement. Kara gave a toast that made me emotional. My agent spoke about the importance of honest storytelling. My family didn't attend. I had sent invitations as a gesture, not an expectation. They never replied. The book was an immediate hit, reaching bestseller lists within a week. Reviews praised its sincerity and emotional insight. Women shared it in book clubs, quoted passages online, and wrote to tell me how it helped them process their own family struggles. But success brought challenges too. My parents hired a lawyer, threatening to sue for invasion of privacy. Their attorney sent a cease and desist letter, claiming I had defamed them. My publisher's legal team reviewed the content and confirmed everything was either factual or clearly my personal perspective, fully protected under free speech. The case never advanced, but it showed how distant we'd become. They cared more about reputation than understanding the pain that led me to write. Vivian responded differently. She wrote an op-ed for a website, claiming she'd been misrepresented in someone else's story. She never used my name, but the implication was obvious. She framed herself as a victim of my success, someone whose privacy had been exploited for profit. The public reaction was swift and mostly unsympathetic. Many noted she could have addressed things privately but chose instead to go public, still without acknowledging her part in the original exclusion. By summer, a year after Paris, I was traveling often for book tours and speaking engagements. At universities, women's conferences, and corporate events on empowerment and authenticity. Every time I shared my story, I saw recognition in people's faces. Many knew what it felt like to be overlooked or diminished within their own families. In August, I received an unexpected email from a woman named Patricia, a family therapist specializing in sibling dynamics and parental favoritism. "I've shared your story with clients," she wrote. "It's helped them see that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I'm writing a book about family scapegoating and would love to interview you for a chapter." I agreed. The interview was insightful and explored not just what happened, but why these family patterns persist. Patricia explained the concepts of the golden child and scapegoat, how families often assign roles that shape behavior over time. "You broke the pattern," she told me. "Most scapegoated children spend their lives chasing approval they'll never get. You chose another path. You validated yourself." That conversation helped me understand my experience in a broader way. I wasn't just the sister left out. I was someone who recognized a damaging cycle and chose to step away from it. In September, I was invited to speak at a major conference in New York about women's empowerment and social media influence. The audience numbered over 1,000. As I stepped onto the stage, I thought of the quiet, uncertain girl I had been just 16 months before. The one who once believed she wasn't worth celebrating unless others said she was. I shared my story with that audience of 1,000. I showed the photos from Paris, talked about the viral reaction and everything that followed. Then I said something I had been reflecting on for months. Going to Paris wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation. A personal revolution, the quiet kind that begins when you stop seeking permission to exist freely and start giving it to yourself. My family had wanted me to disappear, and for years I did. But in Paris, I chose visibility. I realized that when you shine your own light, you don't need anyone else's approval to be radiant. The applause that followed was overwhelming. After the conference, I walked through Central Park, thinking about how much my life had changed. My career was flourishing beyond anything I'd imagined. I had financial stability, professional respect, and a platform to help others. Yet I had also lost my family. Or perhaps I had finally accepted a loss that was always there. That evening, a message arrived from an unknown number. It was Vivian. "I saw your New York speech online. You were right about some things. I've been thinking a lot this past year. I'm in therapy now, working through my own issues. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement, and maybe that was enough for now. I replied simply, "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. When you're ready to talk, I'm here." I didn't know if she ever would, but I meant it. My life no longer depended on her approval or presence. Still, a part of me hoped for healing, not a return to the old patterns, but the creation of something honest and healthy. Months after the New York conference, the effects of my family's actions became clearer. My parents' social circle in Charleston had read my book, and many withdrew, uncomfortable with what they learned about how I'd been treated. The perfect family image they'd built had been based on erasing one daughter. Their reputation suffered. They retired early and moved to a smaller town, away from the judgment of those who now knew the truth. Vivian's career faltered after the wedding controversy and public attention. Her marketing firm quietly let her go during a restructuring, though it was clear her viral reputation had become a liability. 8 months into her marriage, Gregory filed for divorce, unable to cope with the fallout and what he described as her focus on appearances over authenticity. She moved back in with our parents for a while, a humbling experience for someone once celebrated as the successful one. As for me, I sat on my balcony 2 years after that Paris morning, watching Charleston awaken to a peaceful day. My second book was set to release next month, a guide on self-celebration and self-worth for women reclaiming their stories. I had also launched a thriving online community for women dealing with family rejection, offering the resources I once needed myself. Kara and I were planning another trip to Paris, this time simply for joy. The journey from invisible daughter to woman with her own voice had been painful, messy, and far more complex than any revenge story could convey. But as I sipped my coffee, watching the sunlight spread across the city, I understood something vital. I hadn't just escaped being unseen. I had learned to truly see myself, to celebrate myself, to shine without needing permission. And in helping others do the same, I found something far greater than family acceptance. I found purpose, community, and most of all, myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's about choosing not to stay small, building a life so bright that those who tried to silence you can't help but see what they lost when they refuse to see you.